seeing that right was done.
Could I ask about the fasting that you did as a way of bringing about change? Does this now seem to you a productive method?
It is not productive when it starts to destroy the body. The care and attention to the body is the most important thing that humans there can do, because, as you know, it's the only body that you have, and you are there incarnate to show and to be the glory of God. And therefore, when you're fasting and when your body starts to eat away at itself, then you are not necessarily creating good. To fast to get others' attention, I do not feel at this point in time is also a good way. I feel that because of the power of the mind and thought forms, you can do other things by merely being without fasting that would be just as effective.
I also wanted to ask whether you chose assassination as your way of leaving the physical plane, or whether that you were simply ready to go and that news appeared.
It was more ready to go. It was more a contract that was made at that point with the soul of the assassin. I knew that I would be dying in a violent way. When one chooses a path of nonviolence, the irony and paradox is, of course, that they are going to leave the plane in a violent way, but perhaps this was the most important message that I could have given to the people of the planet. Had I just died a weary old man, not as much notice would have been made of my death for the message that I was trying to get across. You have seen the same in some of your wise men, such as King and Kennedy. You have seen the same type they chose. Rather, choosing was made prior to the incarnation. They knew that along with a life and what was going to take place, that they would be leading it in a way a little bit differently from just dying in an old home.
Were you conscious of some of these factors when you were in physical body?
Yes, I was. I knew I had seen my death. I had had my own teachers appear to me just prior to the time that I died, and they told me that I would be taking a journey where I would be in contact with them. I knew very well when it was going to take place, and almost up to the moment prior to the occurrence.
Had this kind of information been available throughout your life?
Yes, yes, much of this information was always available to me. I had several spiritual teachers that would appear to me actually in spirit form, as you would say, in my room, not necessarily when I was in a meditative state. Often when I would just be alone or with others, I would see them appear and they would give me the message which I needed to hear. They were always with me.
Were those around you aware of these kinds of activities with you?
Some of my followers were. In fact, some of them were so closely aligned with my own feelings and thoughts that they would at times see the wise person that I was speaking with. Others were not so aware or wished to tune it out. Others focused on me too much to see there was more there than just me.
That's very interesting to us, and we very much appreciate your sharing that information with us. Earlier, I was asking about your students and whether or not they had been in physical form and whether they would return and so on. And I'm wondering how big an issue is this being in physical form or not being in physical form in the universe generally?
That is an interesting concept, how big an issue. I would say that it is an issue because, as the cluster has spoken before, it is a very important way to learn and to feel and to sense. And through the physical form, you are able to touch things a little bit differently than without the physical form. The seeing is not as important, for you see without the eyes and the physical senses. But when you are wishing to touch or to make contact with another energy, it is a nice way to do so. It also gives you problems to work through just by the mere fact you're working with other energies in physical form and do not quite have the freedom that you have on this plane. But you, as the co-creator, set it up so that you would be in physical form, and this is the way that it has been, and therefore the design is obviously perfect.
I'm hard pressed to remember that always. Um, once entities, though, are at your level, um, is there any difference in terms of whether or not they've experienced a physical existence?
The difference comes in very small ways, very small ways of knowing and acknowledging, and in ways that if the energies at this level are going to work with energies on your plane, it is usually best that they have the actual experience of having been there. Often, when energies are working with humans and they have not been on the physical plane, there can be some major items that they overlook because even on this plane, we have not reached the ultimate knowing yet. And so we tend to forget that there are some things lacking in our knowledge of awareness.
Um, Another question I wanted to ask was um, whether those whether it's appropriate for us to think of all of those us in now in physical form having come from different sources or different planes of reality, different levels, or whether it's whether we think of should think of ourselves as all coming from the same source.
We will be talking about the same source later on in these sessions, this time that we begin to talk about paradigms and what is taking place on the planet and what needs to be done. So, of course, ultimately, it is all the same source. However, there are various levels of that source. There are various other realities. So, everyone on Earth is not at the same level of spiritual development or of knowledge. This is important. It makes the planet a more interesting place to be on, and it makes the humans on the planet work a little bit harder for understanding. This is an important lesson that needs to take place on the planet today.
Uh, is it appropriate to think in terms of there being some level at which entities would never choose again to come into the physical?
Yes, yes, there reaches a point where the soul can only continue to grow toward perfection outside of the Earth's plane. And of course, there is a level where they would not come back to reincarnate and be on the Earth's plane. The if if humans could realize the feelings that souls have, the trauma that, and fear that they have before they reincarnate, they would not be as afraid of death, which has taken them back to this plane. It is, again, a paradox, but also much of what humans are worried about are things that they have forgotten and are just not comfortable with.
I'm not sure if I understood you there. Were you saying that there is souls that might have trepidation about coming into the physical plane?
Yes, yes, always just before, no matter how much they want to, and no matter what contracts have been made with other souls out here, just before they are going to come back to the earth's plane, there is much fear, more so than what you see when a person is getting ready to die. When a person is getting ready to die, there is a calm peace and contentment that comes around them. But with souls coming back to the earth's plane, there is also the fear of having to go through the whole process again, and perhaps what they are wanting to accomplish they can see so clearly before they come in, and they would like to leave out some of the problems that they will encounter during their incarnation and go right to the meat of the issue, as you would say.
Are there some that are in such fear that they make the decision not to come?
No, once they are coming, it is a given. They will come because they need to, and most do need to, and most do come.
Is there some help for those who are in fear?
Oh, yes, there is always much help, many guardians around, and as the soul comes in, and once the soul is born and the child is there, the child clearly sees the guardians that are there to help him or her along. So they're there constantly. It is much like going down a long, dark chute that you cannot quite see the end and a dropping off point.
That tunnel that we try to go through and come into other levels of reality is just reversed.
This is correct.
Robert Monroe believes that a major factor in souls recycling through physical form is our addiction to the emotions. Could you speak to that?
I am familiar with his theory and his addiction to emotions. I do not see it as being the way that he conceives it, because the emotions are there around the earth that souls can drop into. The emotions, as we have discussed before, that are most important is the concept of love, the feeling of love, and that is here much more and much stronger than the emotions that you're going to feel on the physical plane. The sexual content would be more likely to be what a soul might become addicted to, but automatically the soul is going to be moving through the various chakras of the body, and after having experiencing a strong lifetime of sexual prowess, the soul will automatically be moving on up and channeling that energy into a greater awareness. The, the concept of a soul being addicted or striving to return just for the emotions is not one that is consistent with this soul cluster's way of thinking.
Very good, thank you. I have a good many other questions prepared because I know that we're going to have a number of sessions now available to us in a fairly short period. But I wonder if it would be good now to save some of those and hear more of the things you wish to tell us.
That would be fine. We may save them and we will proceed, which is some of the things that we feel is important to be coming through at this point in time. As you are aware, many of the